Welcome back, and today I would like to talk to you about something that bothers many people when they start to sketch and paint as well. That moment when you've got something that you would like to draw and you think, I love that object, that's so great, and then you have it in front of you and you think, what do I do? Where do I start from? So this is kind of what I wanted to talk to you about today. I will start with looking at really simple geometric shapes, like circle, triangle, rectangle, or square. We've got a crescent, we've got oval. Anything else if you can think of, add that in the comments below. Make sure you watch till the end, because at the end I will be showing you how to work on really complicated objects like this, and really easy ways of structuring these and getting over all of these complicated things that might bamboozle you in the beginning. I also would like to let you know that I have another video on Patreon, and that's about the correct way of observing objects before you actually start to draw and paint them. It's quite important. If you get a chance, go over there and subscribe to be my patron on Patreon, and not only will you be getting all these extra videos, but you will also be supporting me to create more videos for you on YouTube as well. I'd like to talk to you about first few steps that will really help you when you just start sketching your objects. So one of those things is I would like you to look at the shape of your chosen object and decide what geometric shape it fits the most. So for example, I've got this little apple here, right? What is the closest shape, closest simple geometric shape that you will be able to see in here? And that, for me, it's a circle. So your first step would be to sketch a circle, and see, I'm doing it very lightly because a lot of these lines would have to be erased afterwards. Now let's look again. What else do you see in this apple? And it's that it's not a perfect circle. So this is when you start to shape. To shape the circle that you've created here to resemble an apple. Okay, and then you add more details, like for example, I can see a little indentation there and a little detail. So you've got your overall shape sketched. Okay, so this would be one of the first steps that you would do if you're sketching an object. Now, what if the object is not round? Perhaps it resembles another shape. What does this remind you of? Triangle. So you don't need to worry about what you can or cannot draw. You just draw a triangle. And everyone can do that, right? Then you start to shape your triangle to look like a piece of watermelon, if that's what you've decided to draw. So see, I can see that it has a little indentation there, bulges out there, and then the bottom line of this triangle is a little bit curvy. So this is the next step that I would do. So first you simplify your shape, put it down on the paper, and then you add different variations to that shape to make it that object that you are drawing. And it's only after that that you would be perhaps adding more details, maybe marking areas of the shadow and so on. And I will do another video that would focus on the steps of rendering. Okay, let's have a look at another object, something like this, a pencil, right? What does that look like? It looks like a line, doesn't it? So you start with a line and then you build it up, right? So it's a thicker line, therefore we're going to add a little bit more thickness to it and a little bit more shape. See, there's like a little triangle on the bottom there at that part is. And then you can, after you've done that, after you've sketched that through, you can start going into more detail and other things that you see on there. So for example, like you might want to correct these lines there, the grain of the pencil, and perhaps because it was sharpened with a knife, we've got these little points there, and so on. So if an object resembles a line, this is what you'd start with. You just start with a line. How about something like this? What does that look like? To me, it looks like quite a wide rectangle. So it's not very long, but it's not a square as well, because this side is obviously longer than this one. So this is what I start with, an overall basic shape. Sometimes squinting can help as well if you would like to see the full shape. Squinting helps to get rid of all the details that usually your mind or your eye gets distracted by. So that way you only focus on the overall main shape, and this is the shape that would start with, and then as you see we go into more and more detail as we progress. So for this one it's this shape, and then I start to form that shape to actually really look like this object. So for example, here I can see that this line goes up and this angle is curved, and so on and so on. So you can go as rough or as detailed as you would like, but the thing that you need to remember is the basic things that we start with, and that's our just simple geometric shapes, and then you'd add the handles, and then you'd add the details and things like that. Okay, what about this object here? A PowerShell. To me it looks like an oval. So if I was to start working on this, I would probably start with the oval. And only then I would be shaping this oval to resemble this particular object. By adding that little corner there. Almost looks like a mango there. And then adding, you know, that curve in there, and then adding these little holes through as well. So I'd make a line because they all go in the line, so there's a clear direction, and then add little holes. So that's an oval shape. This object resembles an oval, that's why we start with that. Another shape, what does this look like? A crescent. So it kind of looks like a moon, a little bit deformed, but that's for the second step, right? So if I was to draw a croissant, the first thing I would do is I'd draw a moon crescent. If it is quite hard for you to draw this, you can always draw an oval or a circle first and then cut that piece out. But I think it's a simple enough shape to draw, even for beginners. And then you start to shape your crescent to resemble the croissant. So what do? See, it's a little bit sort of fat and chunkier here, so we're going to add a little bit more thickness here and there, and then would add the lines, the little crunchy bits here. And then we've got an overall shape of a croissant. And have you noticed that when I've been drawing so far, I've been using a very light hand. So instead of making lines like this, I've been making lines like that, you know, few thin lines. And the reason for that is when you are sketching things, right, you will be needing to erase certain things, especially if you're starting with something like that. You know that these lines, or these lines, helpful structural lines that you really need when you're starting to draw an object, you will not need them once you've passed a certain step. So what you would need to do with them is erase them. So see there, or here with the watermelon, right? And so same with this little bag pouch, or a croissant as well. We'd want to get rid of these lines so they don't get in the way of your shading, of your, you know, next steps that you're going to do. And that's why it's so much easier to erase lines that are done in a soft way that are done in a harsh way. So see, as I'm rubbing here, you can see that this is all gone, and this is still really visible. Depending on what kind of paper you're working on as well, you would probably see that some indentations are really strong as well. And even if you get rid of the darkness, you will still get that little sort of a bump on the paper where you've pressed quite hard. So that's why when you're drawing, make sure that you use a light hand. So now let's move on to something which you would call a composite shape. You know how when we were drawing an apple, we just looked at it and we've decided that it was a circle, right? Now with this shape, it's actually still quite simple, but it also has two shapes. So if you look quite closely at it, you will see that it actually has one circle and then a smaller circle. In the situation of an object that needs more than one simple geometrical shape, you place these shapes, right, that you see in the object, and then you need to join them. To reveal the full shape of your object. Right, and remember, later on we remove the structure lines. So there you've got your pier. Now let's move on to another composite object, something like a spoon. Now how would you deal with finding geometric shapes in something like this? Well, if we look closer, we'll be able to find that it actually consists of a line and then more or less an oval, right? So that's what we will do. First, we'll draw a line, and then we will add an oval. When you come to the next stage, just like before with apples and croissants and all these other things, we are going to adjust the simple geometric forms to fit with the object that we are working on. And here we can make this part a little bit wider. And this part a little bit pointier. I hope it looks very similar to you guys as it does to me, because you guys are looking from the top down and I'm looking sort of sideways a bit, so my viewpoint is a bit different. But this is how my shape is. So this is what you would do, and only after that you will start looking at the reflections, at different patterns and falling shadows and things like that. So you always want to start with a more simplified version of what you're going to do. So that's our basic spoon shape. Now how about if we go into a very complicated side of things? I mean, like, how about that, right? You're looking at it, oh my gosh, there's just so much stuff in there. I mean, where do you start from, right? What we need to do is we need to carefully observe what we see and try and find the simple shapes first. So if I place this on a piece of paper like this, you will be able to see that this can actually fit an oval. So that's what we're going to do. We are going to very lightly sketch an oval, right? Then we've got a little square on the top there. And then we've got this little dangling thing, which looks like a little teardrop, sort of a shape, right? So we've got our major shape down. Now we are going to look at other details that are contained within these simple shapes. So I'm going to start with observation of the pattern, right? So we've got one major shape there, right in the center. That's another oval. That's this big stone here. And then we've got other larger shapes. And remember, we always want to start with larger objects, not smaller ones. So you're always looking out for what's the next biggest thing in whatever you're drawing. So then we've got these things. Next, let's have a look at these two round stones and just place them right in the center of the oval. Next, these blue long stones. And you see how at this stage I'm not giving them the exact shape. I'm not shaping them all the way through, shading them or anything like this. You don't want to get into detail until you've got everything already sketched out. Then let's have a look at these guys here. And now we go into the smallest little jewels, and we're sort of placing them. There's three on this side, one here, and the same on the other side as well. So now we pretty much sketched our major shape. And remember, at any point, if you need to make things larger or smaller, erase something, you can do that at any point. We'll put these little connective things together. So at this stage, you would start refining things. So you would go over and correct. Okay, and then you start to revisit all of these things. Like for example, here we've got little stones, we've got these little bits that are little claws that are holding your stones, and you can start putting all of these things in. You don't want to start putting these things in until you've got all of that information already in place. Very important. It's so important. I keep repeating this to my students all the time. You don't want to go for details before you've done your major constructing or shading, for that matter. You don't want to shade anything until you're absolutely happy with the shape that you've got. So see, even though it seemed really complicated, once you break it down into simple geometrical shapes, it becomes so much easier. And something like this, where you would look at this and just think, oh my goodness, where do I even start? It's really, really easy once you do your step 1, step 2, step 3. In my next video, I will explain the principles and steps of constructing round objects in perspective. So we will look at objects like cups, tubes, and other objects that are originally round, but once they are in perspective, there is a specific rule that they follow. You know, something quite important that you need to know, and we will look at that. So we will look at how to construct these things so that they are done in the correct way. So please subscribe to my channel, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to check out my Patreon page, where I post more videos that are not featured on YouTube. And remember, by doing that, you will actually be supporting me and helping me to create more videos with more information for you. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you very much for drawing with me.